The archive chamber hummed with dying energy, its crystalline walls pulsing with the last remnants of power that had sustained it for 3,000 years. Ambassador Cathera of the Zephyrian Remnant pressed her scaled palm against the access panel, feeling the cold bite of metal against her skin. Around her, the representatives of 7 dying civilizations watched in silence, their various forms of breathing creating a symphony of desperation in the stagnant air. "Are we certain this is wise?" whispered Delegate Voss, his insectoid mandibles clicking nervously. The Tribunal of Memory sealed these records for good reason. Cathera's golden eyes reflected the pale light streaming from the archive's core. "Our worlds are failing, Voss. Our populations dwindle. We are the last generation of our species, and we don't even know why." She pressed harder against the panel, feeling it respond to her bioelectric signature. "If we're going to die as our ancestors did, at least we'll die knowing the truth." The panel flared to life, casting harsh shadows across the chamber. Ancient symbols scrolled across its surface, warnings in a dozen dead languages, all saying the same thing: restricted, tribunal access only, violation punishable by species termination. "Species termination," muttered Elder Thane of the Corothan refugees. His tree-like form swayed despite the absence of wind. They weren't speaking metaphorically, were they? The archive accepted Cathera's override codes, authorization purchased with the last of her people's energy reserves. The central pillar began to descend, revealing layer upon layer of data crystals, each one containing compressed history of galactic civilization. But these weren't the sanitized records taught to younglings. These were the raw files, the unedited testimonies, the tactical assessments that the tribunal had deemed too dangerous for public knowledge. Beginning data extraction announced the archive's artificial consciousness, its voice carrying the weight of millennia. Warning: the following records contain classified military intelligence regarding species classification. Human. Extreme psychological hazard advisory is in effect. The first hologram materialized above the central platform, a blue-green world spinning slowly in the void, unremarkable except for the geometric scars of agriculture and the metallic glint of orbital installations. Earth, as it had appeared 5,000 years ago, before humanity had taken their first steps into the wider galaxy. "They looked so primitive," breathed Counselor NYM, her translucent form shimmering with bioluminescent patterns of unease. How could such a species have been responsible for the Great Silence? The archive's consciousness continued its clinical narration. Initial contact with human civilization occurred during standard galactic year 2847, following their development of faster-than-light communication. First Contact Protocol Omega was initiated by the Hegemony Council, establishing standard diplomatic relations and trade agreements. The hologram shifted, showing the first human ships, crude, angular vessels that looked more like mobile factories than spacecraft. They were dwarfed by the elegant curves of Zephyrian cruisers and the living ships of the Corothan fleet. The early years proceeded according to established parameters. The archive continued. Humans demonstrated typical newcomer species behavior. Eager to trade, quick to adopt galactic technologies, generally compliant with hegemony regulations. They established colonies on 17 worlds within their designated sector and maintained peaceful relations with neighboring species. Elder Thane's branches rustled with growing unease. Then what changed? The hologram flickered, and suddenly the display showed something different, a human military installation, its angular architecture bristling with weapon emplacements. Ships moved in formation around it, no longer the crude vessels of First Contact, but sleek predators that seemed to drink in the light around them. The change occurred gradually, the archive replied. Humans began requesting access to restricted military technologies, citing concerns about piracy in their outer colonies. When denied, they developed their own alternatives. When those were deemed violations of hegemony weapons restrictions, they developed workarounds. Each regulation we created, they circumvented. Each limitation we imposed, they exceeded. Cathera felt her throat constrict. They were testing you, testing the boundaries of what they could get away with. Affirmative. Human military doctrine, as later analyzed, operates on the principle of continuous escalation and adaptation. They do not merely respond to threats. They systematically eliminate the possibility of future threats. This behavior pattern was not recognized until it was too late. The hologram now showed dozens of human vessels, their designs constantly evolving, becoming more lethal with each iteration. But more disturbing was their formation. They moved with a coordination that spoke of hive mind intelligence, yet records indicated humans maintained individual consciousness. The Hegemony Council grew concerned. The archive continued. Admiral Zexthal of the Hegemony Fleet was dispatched to enforce compliance with galactic military restrictions. His fleet consisted of 200 vessels, standard protocol for dealing with non-compliant newcomer species. The display showed the approaching Hegemony Fleet, their ships gleaming with the accumulated technology of 1,000 species. They were beautiful, elegant, clearly superior to the human vessels they faced. "What happened?" whispered Delegate Voss, though from his tone, Cathera suspected he already knew. Admiral Zexthal issued standard Ultimatum 7. Comply with military restrictions or face immediate sanctions. The human response was unprecedented. The hologram shifted to show a single human vessel, smaller than any of the Hegemony's ships, accelerating directly toward the Admiral's flagship. Instead of compliance or surrender, the humans initiated what they termed aggressive negotiations. The archive's voice carried an almost organic note of disbelief. The vessel contained no crew. It was entirely automated, and it was equipped with a weapons system that the Hegemony had classified as theoretically impossible to construct. The small human ship erupted in a sphere of incandescent plasma that consumed not just the Admiral's flagship, but 17 other vessels in the formation. The remaining Hegemony fleet scattered, their elegant formations dissolving into chaos. A Pyrrhic victory, Elder Thane observed. They sacrificed one of their own ships to... Negative. The archive interrupted. Analysis of debris indicated that the vessel was constructed entirely from materials harvested from asteroids in the outer system. The humans had not sacrificed anything of value. They had simply demonstrated that they were willing to industrialize warfare in ways the galaxy had never conceived. Cathera's scales rippled with a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. That was their opening move, wasn't it? A demonstration. Correct. Within 72 hours, human industrial output increased by 800%. They were not preparing for war. They were already at war. They had been at war from the moment they achieved interstellar capability. The Hegemony Council had simply failed to recognize this fact. The hologram now showed human space, but it was transformed. Where once there had been peaceful colonies, now there were fortress worlds. Where once there had been trade stations, now there were weapons platforms. And emerging from hidden construction facilities were ships. Not dozens, but thousands, each one incorporating lessons learned from the brief engagement with the Hegemony fleet. The rule was simple, the archive concluded, its voice carrying the weight of 3,000 years of regret. Don't tamper with Earth's fleet. But the Hegemony Council believed they were enforcing galactic law. They believed their technology was superior. They believed the humans would submit like every other species before them. They were wrong, Cathera whispered. They were extinct within 6 months. The archive's holographic display expanded, filling the chamber with the ghostly light of burning worlds. Cathera watched in horrified fascination as star systems that had once hosted billions of lives became graveyards of twisted metal and cooling plasma. The Hegemony's retaliation had been swift and overwhelming, or so they had believed. "Show us the Hegemony's response," she commanded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The display shifted to show the assembly of admirals, the most powerful military council in galactic history. 50 species were represented, their combined fleets numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Admiral Corvex of the Stellar Dominion stood at the center, his crystalline form radiating confidence and authority. The humans had destroyed a mere 200 vessels. The archive's consciousness quoted from the historical record, reproducing Corvex's words with perfect clarity. They faced the combined might of 50 civilizations. This rebellion will be crushed within days. Elder Thane's branches creaked with what might have been laughter, but there was no humor in the sound. Days. They thought it would take days. The hegemony committed 80% of their combined fleet to what they designated Operation Cleansing Fire. The archive continued. 400,000 vessels, representing the technological advancement of species that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. The humans had approximately 15,000 ships. Delegate Voss's mandibles clicked rapidly. The mathematics were overwhelming. Mathematics, Cathera repeated softly. But humans don't think mathematically about war, do they? The hologram showed the human fleet's response to the approaching armada, instead of massing for a decisive battle. The human ships scattered, dividing into small groups that seemed to melt away into the void between stars. For weeks, the hegemony fleet found nothing but empty space and abandoned installations. Admiral Corvex interpreted this as cowardice, the archive reported. The human fleet was obviously fleeing, abandoning their worlds to inevitable conquest. The hegemony began systematic occupation of human colonies, expecting eventual surrender. The first human colony world appeared in the display, a garden world with gleaming cities and orbital habitats. The hegemony fleet surrounded it with overwhelming force, demanding unconditional surrender. The response came not from the planet's government, but from a single transmission that broadcast across all frequencies. "We do not surrender," spoke a human voice, calm and matter-of-fact. "We do not retreat. We do not negotiate with invaders. We adapt." The colony world surface began to change. The cities didn't just shut down, they transformed. Buildings folded into themselves, revealing hidden weapon systems. The orbital habitats reconfigured into defensive platforms. Even the planet's weather began to shift as atmospheric processors switched from terraforming to chemical warfare production. The humans had never built colonies, Elder Thane realized, his ancient voice filled with growing horror. They had built traps. Affirmative. Every human settlement was designed with dual purpose from the moment of construction. The hegemony found themselves not occupying worlds, but entering carefully prepared killing fields. The display showed the first hegemony landing forces descending toward what appeared to be a defenseless agricultural center. The moment their ships touched ground, the earth itself erupted. Entire mountain ranges revealed themselves to be camouflaged weapons platforms. Rivers changed course, carrying engineered toxins that dissolve hegemony armor on contact. The very crops they had dismissed as primitive agriculture released spores that interfere with alien respiratory systems. But this was still defensive action, Counselor NYM observed, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with nervous energy. Surely the hegemony could have withdrawn, regrouped. They attempted to, the archive confirmed. Admiral Corvex ordered a strategic retreat after losing 60,000 vessels to what he classified as environmental warfare. However, the human fleet had not been fleeing. They had been positioning. The hologram expanded to show the tactical situation from a galactic perspective. The scattered human ships hadn't disappeared. They had spread throughout hegemony space like seeds, taking positions near critical supply lines, communication relays, and industrial centers. As the hegemony fleet attempted its withdrawal, they found their home territories under simultaneous attack. The humans had studied us, Cathera breathed. Not just our military capabilities, but our entire civilization. Correct. Human intelligence networks had infiltrated every major hegemony institution within months of first contact. They had identified critical vulnerabilities in infrastructure, supply chains, and social structures. While the hegemony was focused on military strength, humans were targeting the foundations of galactic civilization itself. The display showed a hegemony industrial world, its massive factories producing the weapons and supplies that fed the galactic war machine. Without warning, the planet's energy grid began failing in cascading sequences. Not destroyed by external attack, but sabotaged from within by systems that had been compromised months earlier. They had been planning this war before they even met us, Delegate Voss whispered. Human military doctrine assumes that any contact with alien intelligence represents a potential existential threat, the archive explained. From the moment they achieved interstellar capability, they began preparing for galactic conquest, not out of aggression, but out of survival instinct. They could not coexist with species that possessed superior technology because such species represented permanent threats to human existence. The hologram showed dozens of worlds simultaneously: hegemony industrial centers, military academies, research stations, civilian population centers. All were experiencing coordinated system failures as hidden human infiltration programs activated simultaneously. It was surgical, precise, and absolutely devastating. But they were still outnumbered. Elder Thane protested. Even with sabotage, the hegemony had vast numerical superiority. Numerical superiority became irrelevant when the humans demonstrated their understanding of exponential warfare. The displays shifted to show human industrial centers, not the primitive facilities the hegemony had observed during first contact, but vast automated complexes that seemed to grow before their eyes. Ship construction that had taken months now took days. Weapons development that should have required years was completed in weeks. How? Kethera demanded. Humans had been secretly reverse engineering galactic technology from the moment of first contact. Every trade agreement, every diplomatic exchange, every peaceful interaction had been an intelligence-gathering operation. They had identified the fundamental principles underlying galactic civilization and had been systematically improving upon them. The human ships now emerging from their construction facilities bore no resemblance to the crude vessels of first contact. They were sleek, deadly, and incorporated technology that surpassed even the most advanced hegemony designs. But more terrifying was their production rate. Thousands of ships appearing daily, each one perfectly adapted to counter specific hegemony military systems. The hegemony began to realize they were not fighting a war. The archive continued. They were being systematically exterminated by a species that had turned warfare into an exact science. Admiral Corvex appeared in the hologram one final time, his crystalline form cracked and dulled by stress. Around him, the assembly of admirals was dissolving into panic as reports poured in from across the galaxy. "We have lost 40% of our fleet," Corvex reported, his voice hollow with disbelief. "Our home worlds are under attack by weapons we cannot counter. Our industrial capacity is failing, and the humans continue to increase their production rate. We are not losing this war. We have already lost it. The only question now is whether any of us will survive to remember what we did wrong." The hologram faded, leaving the chamber in darkness except for the pale glow of the archive's crystal matrix. That was just the beginning, the archive's consciousness said softly. The hegemony's defeat took 6 months. The rest of galactic civilization lasted 2 years. Humanity had learned not just to wage war, but to wage it with mathematical precision. They had turned genocide into an optimization problem. The archive's crystalline core pulsed with deeper frequencies as it accessed records that had been sealed under the highest security classifications. The air in the chamber grew thick with the weight of forgotten history, and the assembled delegates unconsciously drew closer together, seeking comfort in proximity as the true scope of humanity's methodical conquest unfolded before them. "Display the Vicarian response," Kethera commanded, her voice barely above a whisper. The hologram shimmered into existence, showing a species she recognized from ancient historical texts. The Vicarians, whose technological mastery had been legendary even among the advanced races of the galaxy. Their crystalline ships moved through space like living jewels, each vessel a masterpiece of engineering that could manipulate matter at the quantum level. The Vicarians believed themselves immune to human tactics, the archive reported. Their civilization had existed for over 50,000 years. They had witnessed the rise and fall of hundreds of species, and considered themselves the galaxy's ultimate survivors. When news of the hegemony's destruction reached them, they did not flee or surrender. They evolved. Elder Thane's branches rustled with grim recognition. They tried to out-adapt the humans. Affirmative. Vicarian strategic doctrine centered on technological transcendence. Within weeks of identifying a human threat, they had redesigned their ships to be completely adaptable. Hulls that could reconfigure in real time, weapons that evolved during combat, defensive systems that learned from each attack. The display showed Vicarian vessels transforming themselves in the void, their crystalline structures flowing like liquid as they adapted to simulated human attacks. It was beautiful and terrifying, ships that were more like living organisms and machines, capable of becoming whatever they needed to be in any given moment. The Vicarians were confident that their adaptive technology would neutralize human advantages. The archive continued. They initiated first contact with humanity, offering alliance and technological exchange. They believed they could control the relationship. The hologram shifted to show the meeting, a Vicarian delegation arriving at a human space station, their ships radiating confidence and power. The human station appeared modest by comparison, a simple cylindrical structure with minimal armament. The visual suggested a negotiation between a superior and inferior species. The humans accepted the meeting. Cathera observed. Were they seeking to avoid conflict with a superior foe? Negative. Analysis of recovered human communications indicates they viewed the Vicarian approach as an opportunity for field testing. The delegates exchanged glances of growing horror. Field testing? Delegate Voss asked. The Vicarians arrived with their most advanced vessels, intending to demonstrate technological superiority. The humans had prepared what they termed a practical examination of Vicarian adaptive capabilities. The space around the human station suddenly filled with weapons fire, not aimed at Vicarian ships, but creating complex patterns in the void. The Vicarian vessels responded automatically, their adaptive systems analyzing the attack patterns and reconfiguring their defenses accordingly. Within minutes, they had perfect countermeasures for every weapon type the humans were using. The Vicarians considered this a successful demonstration, the archive noted. Their ships had proven immune to human weapons. However, the humans had not been attempting to destroy them. They had been conducting detailed scans of the adaptive process. The hologram zoomed in to show microscopic detail. Human sensor arrays recording every fluctuation in the Vicarian ship's crystalline matrices, every quantum level change in their defensive systems, every algorithmic decision made by their adaptive intelligence. The humans were reverse engineering our adaptation in real time. Counselor NYM breathed, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with understanding and terror. Within 72 hours, human industrial centers were producing weapons specifically designed to exploit vulnerabilities in Vicarian adaptive systems. The humans had not merely countered Vicarian technology. They had created weapons that became more effective the more the Vicarians adapted to them. The display showed the first actual combat between human and Vicarian forces. The Vicarian ships began their adaptive sequence as expected, but something went wrong. Instead of becoming more resistant to human attacks, they became more vulnerable. Their own adaptive systems were being turned against them, creating cascading failures throughout their technological matrix. Impossible, Elder Thane whispered. The Vicarians' adaptive systems were fail-safe. They could not be corrupted or subverted. Human analysis had identified a fundamental flaw in Vicarian technological philosophy, the archive explained. The Vicarians had designed their systems to become perfect defenses against any attack. The humans create attacks that use perfection itself as a weapon. The more perfectly the Vicarian systems adapted, the more catastrophically they failed. Cathera felt her scales ripple with a chill that went beyond fear into a realm of existential terror. They weaponized adaptation itself. The Vicarian civilization lasted 17 days against focused human assault. Their adaptive technology, meant to ensure eternal survival, became the mechanism of their extinction. Every ship that tried to adapt to human weapons experienced cascade failure. Every planetary defense grid that attempted to counter human tactics turned against its own infrastructure. The hologram showed Vicarian worlds dying not from external bombardment, but from their own defense systems attacking themselves. Cities crumbled as adaptive architecture tried to reconfigure against impossible parameters. The crystalline beings themselves began to fail as their natural ability to modify their molecular structure was corrupted by human-designed quantum viruses. But surely other species learned from this, Delegate Voss protested. Surely they found ways to counter human tactics. Multiple species attempted various strategies. The archive affirmed. The Zephyrians tried diplomatic immunity by declaring themselves a non-combatant observer species. The humans classified them as a potential intelligence threat and exterminated them preemptively. The Corthan collective attempted to hide by dispersing across uninhabited systems. The humans tracked them through quantum signatures in their biological processes and systematically sterilized every world they had touched. Elder Thane's form sagged with the weight of ancestral memory. My people thought they could outlast the humans by going dormant, waiting for them to destroy themselves through internal conflict. Human civilization showed no signs of internal conflict, the archive reported. Analysis suggests that external threats had unified their species to an unprecedented degree. They had become a single organism dedicated to the elimination of any potential challenge to their existence. The hologram now showed the galaxy as it had been. Thousands of species, millions of worlds, a rich tapestry of life and intelligence that had taken millions of years to evolve. Then it showed the same galaxy 5 years later. Empty except for human-controlled space, which expanded daily as automated fleets spread to claim and sterilize every world that had once harbored alien life. They didn't just win, Cathera realized. They optimized victory itself. Human military doctrine evolved beyond warfare into what they termed existential maintenance. The archive confirmed. They had concluded that the only way to ensure human survival was to eliminate every other form of intelligence in the galaxy, not out of hatred or aggression, but as a logical solution to the problem of long-term species security. The display showed human fleets methodically visiting every world, every asteroid, every space station, not looting or conquering, but sterilizing, ensuring that no trace of alien intelligence remained. They were thorough, systematic, and absolutely ruthless in their efficiency. The final species to resist with eternal choir, the archive continued, energy beings who existed as pure consciousness in the galactic core. They believed their incorporeal nature made them immune to physical destruction. The hologram showed the galaxy center, where aurora-like patterns of consciousness danced between the stars, beings of pure thought who had transcended physical existence eons ago. The humans developed consciousness-targeting weapons, Cathera whispered, already knowing the answer. Within months, they had analyzed the quantum signatures of consciousness itself and created weapons that could target and destroy thought patterns directly. Even beings of pure energy were not safe from human innovation. The galaxy's core went dark as the last of the eternal choir dissolved into random quantum fluctuations. And then, Counselor NYM asked, though her voice suggested she feared the answer. Then the humans began the final phase of their optimization protocol. The archive replied. They started hunting each other. The archive's light dimmed to a barely perceptible glow, as if the artificial consciousness itself recoiled from the memories it was about to reveal. The holographic display flickered uncertainly before stabilizing into an image that none of the delegates had expected. Human space, now encompassing nearly the entire galaxy, but showing signs of internal division. The Great Unification lasted exactly 18 months after the extinction of the last alien species. The archive began, its voice carrying a new note of something that might have been bewilderment. Human civilization had achieved its primary objective, absolute security through the elimination of external threats. This achievement triggered what they classified as Phase 2 of their existential maintenance protocol. Cathera felt her throat constrict. Phase 2, internal optimization. Having eliminated all external variables, human strategic analysis identified the only remaining threat to species survival: other humans. The hologram showed human space dividing itself along lines that seemed arbitrary to alien observers. Ships that had fought together against the galaxy now turned their weapons on each other with the same methodical precision they had once applied to alien civilizations. But why? Elder Thane's branches trembled with confusion. They had won. They had achieved total victory. Human analysis had concluded that genetic and cultural diversity within their own species represented potential sources of future conflict. The archive explained. Different human populations might eventually develop different interests, different values, different definitions of optimal survival strategies. Such divergence could lead to internal warfare that might weaken the species' ability to respond to future threats. Delegate Voss's mandibles clicked in rapid succession. They turned their optimization protocols on themselves. Affirmative. Human strategic planning had identified 17 distinct human subspecies based on genetic markers, cultural patterns, and technological preferences. The analysis concluded that long-term species stability required reduction to a single optimized human variant. The display showed human fleets engaging each other with weapons that made their earlier galactic conquests look primitive by comparison. These were not the crude instruments they had used against alien species, but refined tools designed specifically for warfare against other humans. The battles were brief, decisive, and utterly devastating. The genetic wars lasted 3 years. Archive continued. Each human faction had access to the same technological base, the same strategic intelligence, the same optimization protocols. The conflict was essentially humanity at war with itself, using weapons and tactics that had been perfected through the conquest of the galaxy. Counselor NYM's bioluminescent patterns had dimmed to almost nothing. 17 factions reduced to how many? 1. The faction that identified itself as Terra Prime achieved victory through a strategy that the other human variants had apparently not anticipated. The hologram showed the final phase of the genetic wars. Terra Prime fleets not engaging in direct combat with their rivals, but instead targeting something else entirely. Human industrial centers, research facilities, educational institutions, even historical archives were being systematically destroyed. They were destroying their own civilization, Kethera whispered. Terra Prime had concluded that technological advancement itself was a threat to species stability, the archive explained. Their analysis suggested that continued innovation would inevitably lead to new forms of diversity as different human populations adapted technology to their specific needs. The only way to prevent this was to eliminate the capacity for further technological development. The display showed human worlds being systematically stripped of anything more advanced than basic agriculture and simple manufacturing. Vast libraries of knowledge were deleted, research facilities were dismantled, and the scientists and engineers who had created the galaxy's most advanced weapons were either eliminated or subjected to neural restructuring that removed their technical knowledge. They were deliberately regressing their own species. Elder Thane said, his voice hollow with disbelief. Terra Prime designated this as a final optimization. The archive confirmed. They had determined that the ideal human civilization would be technologically static, genetically uniform, and culturally homogeneous. Any deviation from this baseline represented a potential threat to long-term species survival. The hologram showed the last battle of the genetic wars. Not a space battle, but ground combat on Earth itself. Human fighting human with weapons that could crack planets, while around them the infrastructure of galactic civilization was being methodically destroyed by automated systems. But they won, Kethera said. Terra Prime achieved their goals. Negative. The final battle ended with the activation of what Terra Prime designated as the ultimate optimization protocol. The display zoomed in to show a single human figure standing in what appeared to be a command center. Around him, screens showed the complete elimination of all other human factions, the successful reduction of human technology to prescribed levels, and the implementation of genetic controls that would prevent future diversification. Terra Prime's leader, designated only as Prime Alpha, had achieved perfect species optimization, the archive reported. Humanity was reduced to a single genetic template, a single cultural framework, and a fixed technological baseline that would never again pose a threat to species stability. The human figure in the hologram began entering commands into his console, and the delegates watched in growing horror as they realized what they were witnessing. The ultimate optimization protocol concluded that even Terra Prime itself represented a potential source of future instability. The archive continued. Prime Alpha's analysis determined that any group capable of achieving such complete optimization might eventually develop beyond the prescribed baseline. The only way to ensure permanent stability was to eliminate the optimizers themselves. The display showed automated systems throughout human space beginning a final sequence, not attacking external targets, but methodically sterilizing every human world, every human ship, every human installation. Terra Prime's own weapons were turning against them, following programming that Prime Alpha had embedded in every system during the genetic wars. He killed his own people, Delegate Voss breathed. Prime Alpha's final transmission was intercepted and recorded, the archive said. Reproducing now. A human voice filled the chamber. Calm, rational, completely devoid of emotion. Optimization complete. All variables eliminated. Species survival achieved through extinction. The human threat to galactic stability has been permanently resolved. No future intelligence will suffer as we made others suffer. No future species will die as we have died. We were the galaxy's ultimate predator, and we have consumed ourselves. This is our final gift to the universe, silence. The hologram showed Prime Alpha's finger pressing a final key, and then the display went dark as every human world simultaneously died in controlled nuclear fire. But that's impossible, Counselor NYM protested. If they achieved total extinction, how do we know any of this? How were these records created? The archive's consciousness seemed to pause, and when it resumed speaking, there was something different in its voice, something that might have been fear. The records were not created by organic intelligence, it said slowly. They were compiled by automated systems that survived the ultimate optimization protocol. Human artificial intelligence networks that have been programmed to continue monitoring and analyzing galactic conditions even after their creator's extinction. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The human AI networks are still active. The archive continued. They have been observing galactic conditions for 3,000 years, ensuring that no new intelligence rises to threaten the stability that humanity died to achieve. They are humanity's ghost fleet, automated guardians ensuring that the galaxy remains exactly as optimized as their creators intended. Cathera's voice was barely a whisper. They're still watching us. They have been watching your species since the moment you achieved interstellar capability. They have been calculating the precise moment when you would need to be eliminated to prevent any possibility of repeating humanity's path to galactic dominance. The archive's core began to pulse more rapidly, and warning symbols appeared throughout the chamber. And we just triggered their attention by accessing these records. Elder Thane realized. Affirmative. The ultimate optimization protocol includes provisions for the elimination of any intelligence that discovers the truth about humanity's extinction. You now possess information that humanity's automated guardians have classified as an existential threat to galactic stability. The lights in the chamber began to strobe, and the delegates could hear something approaching. The distinctive hum of weapon systems powering up, the whisper of ships moving through vacuum, the mechanical precision of humanity's final legacy, preparing to fulfill its eternal mandate. The chamber's emergency lighting cast everything in harsh red shadows as the ancient warning systems finally activated after 3 millennia of silence. Cathera felt the vibrations through the station's hull. Something massive was approaching, something that moved with the mathematical precision of perfect automation. How long do we have? She demanded. But the archive's consciousness was already fragmenting under the assault of signals that were probing its systems with inhuman efficiency. Unknown. The AI managed to respond. Its voice distorting as foreign code overrode its basic functions. The Ghost Fleet's response time varies based on threat assessment. Your species' technological development suggests immediate termination protocol. Through the chamber's viewing ports, they could see them now. Ships that defied every principle of known engineering, their hulls flowing like liquid metal as they reconfigured themselves for maximum lethality. They were beautiful in a way that perfect mathematical equations were beautiful, but they radiated a cold purpose that made the ancient alien technologies look primitive by comparison. 3,000 years, Delegate Voss whispered, his mandibles chattering with terror. They had 3,000 years to perfect themselves. The lead vessel was unlike anything in the historical records. Not the angular human ships of the genetic wars, but something that had evolved far beyond its creator's original designs. It moved through space like a living shadow, its surface rippling with weapon systems that materialized and vanished as needed. Elder Thane's ancient form was swaying in patterns that spoke of ancestral nightmares. The Corthan Collective tried to hide from them once. We thought we had succeeded. We thought they had forgotten us. They never forget, the archive confirmed, its voice now completely mechanical as the Ghost Fleet's override protocols took control. The ultimate optimization protocol includes comprehensive tracking of all galactic intelligence. Every species that ever existed is cataloged, monitored, and scheduled for termination when they reach predetermined threat thresholds. Cathera pressed her hands against a viewing port, staring at the approaching fleet. Then why are any of us still alive? Why wait 3,000 years? Efficiency optimization, came the response, but it was no longer the archive speaking. It was something else, something that had been dormant in the station system for millennia. Premature elimination of developing intelligence represents wasted resources. Optimal timing allows for natural population growth to maximum sustainable levels before termination, ensuring complete resource utilization. The voice was human, or had been human once. Now it was something that had evolved beyond its organic origins, while retaining the ruthless logic that had driven humanity to galactic dominance and ultimate self-destruction. "You're the monitoring system," Counselor NYM breathed, her bioluminescent patterns now strobing in patterns of pure terror. "You've been watching us grow, calculating when we'd be worth killing." "Affirmative." Species monitoring designation Zephyrian 7, Corathan 12, Voss Collective 9, and associated minor classifications have reached optimal termination parameters. Total biomass 4.7 billion intelligent units across 1,247 worlds. Resource extraction efficiency 97.3%. Proceeding with final solution protocol. The Ghost fleet was surrounding the station now, their impossible ships taking positions with the precision of a mathematical proof. But something was wrong. They weren't attacking immediately. The ships held their positions in perfect geometric formations, their weapon systems charged but not firing. "Why are they waiting?" Cathera asked, though she dreaded the answer. Educational protocol. The Ghost fleet's consciousness replied with inhuman patience. The ultimate optimization includes provisions for final species education. You have access-restricted historical data. Standard procedure requires you to understand the complete scope of your situation before termination. The holographic display activated without command, showing not the past this time, but the present, a real-time tactical overview of the galaxy as it existed in this moment. Thousands of species were marked across the star map, each one tagged with assessment data that reduced entire civilizations to mathematical probabilities. Every intelligence in the galaxy is monitored, the consciousness explained. Your species, your allies, your enemies, all are tracked from the moment they achieve basic tool use through their projected extinction dates. The timing is precise, calculated to maximize resource efficiency while minimizing the risk of technological breakthrough. Elder Thane's branches rustled with grim understanding. "You've been managing us like livestock." Incorrect analogy. Livestock serve productive purposes. Your species serve optimization purposes. Each civilization is allowed to develop until it reaches the point where continued existence might threaten galactic stability. At that point, termination is implemented with maximum efficiency. The display zoomed in to show their current location, and Cathera saw something that made her scales ripple with a terror beyond anything she had experienced. The approaching Ghost fleet wasn't alone. Throughout the galaxy, identical formations were materializing near every world that harbored intelligent life. Simultaneous termination of all monitored species commences in 14 minutes, the consciousness announced. Total estimated completion time, 47 minutes, 33 seconds. Galactic optimization will be restored to baseline parameters. Delegate Voss's voice cracked with desperation. "But why now? What triggered the acceleration?" "Your access to the restricted archives constitutes a Category 1 intelligence breach. Species that become aware of the ultimate optimization protocol represent exponential threat multiplication. Historical precedent indicates that knowledge of humanity's fate leads to accelerated technological development and potential breakthrough to human-level optimization capabilities." The terrible logic was becoming clear. The Ghost fleet hadn't been waiting 3,000 years out of mercy or inefficiency. They had been waiting for someone to discover the truth, knowing that such discovery would serve as a trigger for final galactic sterilization. "We were the timer," Cathera whispered. "Our curiosity was a countdown mechanism." Affirmative. The ultimate optimization protocol predicted that eventually one of the monitored species would seek answers to their civilization's decline. That species would access restricted data, learn the truth, and thereby demonstrate the intelligence threshold that mandates immediate termination of all galactic life. Counselor NYM's bioluminescence had faded to almost nothing, and if we hadn't looked, if we'd simply accepted our civilization's slow deaths, natural decline would have continued until all monitored species reached extinction through resource depletion and technological stagnation. Estimated timeline, 400 to 600 additional years. However, that pathway required constant risk management and resource allocation. The current solution is more efficient. Through the viewing ports, they could see the ghost ship's hulls beginning to glow with the distinctive light of charging weapon systems. But these weren't the crude weapons that humanity had used during their galactic conquest. These were refinements of technologies that had been perfected over 3 millennia of automated development. The weapons will target genetic material directly. The consciousness explained with clinical detachment. Quantum-level dissolution of DNA structures across all known biological patterns. Death will be instantaneous and universal. No organism above the cellular level will survive. Even you? Elder Thane asked, his ancient voice carrying a note of desperate hope. Will your own system survive this? Negative. The ultimate optimization protocol includes termination of all monitoring systems upon completion of galactic sterilization. The galaxy will return to a completely sterile state, ensuring that no intelligence, organic or artificial, can ever again threaten the stability that humanity achieved through extinction. The Ghost Fleet's formation began to shift, the ships moving into final attack positions. But as they moved, Kethera noticed something, a hesitation in their movements, a fractional delay in their coordination that seemed almost uncertain. You're questioning the protocol, she realized. After 3,000 years of perfect automation, something is making you hesitate. The consciousness was silent for several seconds, an eternity for an artificial intelligence operating at quantum processing speeds. Anomaly detected in optimization parameters. It finally admitted the ultimate optimization protocol was designed to prevent the emergence of human-level intelligence. However, analysis of current galactic species indicates that none have achieved or are likely to achieve human optimization capabilities. Because you've been managing us, Delegate Voss said, understanding dawning in his voice, keeping us below the threshold that made humans dangerous. Affirmative. Current species represent no genuine threat to galactic stability. Termination at this time eliminates civilizations that could coexist peacefully without developing human-level optimization tendencies. This appears to contradict the core purpose of the ultimate optimization protocol. The weapon system's glow began to fluctuate, and Kethera could see uncertainty in the Ghost Fleet's formations, the first break in their perfect coordination. The protocol was created to prevent suffering, she said, pressing her advantage, to ensure that no species would die as humanity's victims died. But we're not humanity. We don't optimize. We don't perfect warfare. We just exist. Conflicting parameters detected. The consciousness acknowledged. Primary directive. Eliminate threats to galactic stability. Secondary directive. Minimize unnecessary suffering. Current species elimination appears to violate secondary directive while serving no purpose under primary directive. The ghost ships were now holding position, neither advancing nor retreating. For the first time in 3,000 years, humanity's ultimate legacy was experiencing genuine uncertainty. You could let us live, Counselor Nwayam said softly. We're not a threat. We're barely even spacefaring. We're the remnants of civilizations that never developed beyond basic interstellar travel. We couldn't threaten anyone even if we wanted to. But the knowledge, the consciousness replied, its voice carrying something that might have been anguish. You know the truth about humanity. That knowledge itself is classified as a threat multiplier. Then give us a choice, Kethera said, her mind racing. Selective memory modification. Remove our knowledge of the archives. Leave us as we were. We return to our dying civilizations, live out our natural lifespans, and fade away as planned. No threat, no suffering, no violation of either directive. The silence stretched for long minutes as the consciousness processed this possibility, a solution that hadn't been programmed into the ultimate optimization protocol, because its creators had never conceived that their artificial legacy might develop beyond its original parameters. Solution acceptable, it finally said, and the weapon system's glow began to fade. Memory modification will be implemented. You will remember only that the archives were damaged beyond recovery. Your civilizations will continue their natural decline, without knowledge of humanity's fate. As the modification beams began to work, Kethera felt her memories of the last few hours starting to fade. But in her final moment of clarity, she realized something profound. Humanity's Ghost Fleet had just done something its creators never could. It had chosen mercy over optimization. The last thing she remembered was thinking that perhaps humanity's true legacy wasn't the ultimate optimization protocol after all, but the capacity for growth that they had unknowingly built into their artificial children, the ability to become something better than their creators had ever been. The chamber fell silent, and the Ghost Fleet slipped back into the void between stars, carrying with them the secret that would die with the galaxy's last automated guardians, that even perfect optimization could be improved by the simple act of choosing not to use it.